Ladies and gentlemen, I just got done with an amazing podcast interview with Sophia Josephina. Amazing person. You should look it up. All her links are down below. She talks about him in the podcast. This is a part of a series where I'm interviewing men and women about some of the hard things that we don't talk about, which is man-woman dynamics, consent, dating, sexuality, prostitution, sex trafficking, human trafficking, all these taboo subjects that we have opinions about, but we don't get deep on. Here, Sophia and I talk about a lot of stuff, leading into sexual trauma, leading into how interpreting sex, shame and pain that women and men both carry. And the goal of this podcast or this series of interviews is to be able to peel back the onion, to not live in judgment, to not live in a cause that represents this, but to really get down to some answers. And if you're a guy listening to this, I think they're going to be there about what women think, what women go through, about sex, about properly escalating, about properly feeling who we are. In any case, I'm going to leave it to her because she does an amazing job. And as always, I probably talk too much in it. But what an amazing woman. We're going to be talking more, and there's going to be more interviews with different men and women that I talk to have completely different angles on this. And of course, while communicating from Austin, Texas to Amsterdam, man, there can be a lot of difficulties. So sometimes the line breaks, and just bear with us on that. And of course, you can follow Sophie. All of her links are down below, or you should really follow her because on social media, she's great. And all of my links, if you're a man and you want to dive deeper into coaching and looking at yourself and all the different things that we do at Austin Men's Development, all those links are down below. This was an intense process, this one, so hopefully you feel the same way. Yeah. Okay. Hey, so this is super cool. So Sophie, I feel like super like bonded and connected with you because you interviewed me, and you guys should check that on her podcast. And she's interviewed some great people. Hans, my good friend, who connected us. You did a great interview with him, like about relationships, different perspectives. But you, so you're a coach. Let's start there. How do people find out about you? Let's start there.
So my name is Sophia Josephina. I am a life, sex, and relating coach, and I work a lot with the masculine and the feminine, and with kind of combining Tantra with neuroscience and trauma.
Okay.
So that's very shortly what I do. You can find me on Instagram as Sophia Josephina, and my website, sophiajosephina.com.
Cool.
Both with an S and PH. So this is the super short version.
And so this is what I like about it with your Instagram, and on Facebook or whatever, is you write about the situation that you're talking about. And I try and do the same, and it's so hard to build engagement with it, but I've become engaged with yours, which is really interesting. And sometimes I misread things and totally. So, man, but that's a whole nother thing too. Like the owing and ownership is a part of sex. That's a huge thing. Okay. You interviewed me and it made me go, man, I think I want to interview women, which made me explore all these questions on masculine and feminine, on dating, on consent, on things like rape and trauma from rape and sexual trauma and sex working and sex trafficking. And I contacted all these people, and you gave me this big yes back.
Yeah.
I think we're going to talk a lot, maybe more than this interview, but where do you want to, what spoke to you on it the most?
Okay, so what I'm really fascinated about in general is, like, it feels like men and women have completely lost each other. There's so much pain there. There's so much misunderstanding. There's so many stereotypes. Both sides don't feel seen, don't feel acknowledged, get triggered. And we seem to be missing a language or an understanding of really what's happening in both worlds. So a lot of the work that I do is just honestly, what's actually happening in a guy? What's actually happening, like, outside of all the stereotypes? What's actually happening when a guy closes off? And, like, to understand him instead of telling him how to be. And the same for women, and so what I was doing this week, for instance, is I went into this thought that women have that no man can handle me, right? So many women tell me this. Okay, what's actually happening there? What's happening there for the women, and what's happening there for the guys? Because this whole idea that, like, men are not capable of relating or emotional vulnerability, I don't buy into that at all.
And I think it's necessary for us to come together. Now, obviously, if somebody's a lesbian, if somebody's a homosexual man, that's fine. I'm not talking about that. Like I'm saying that for heterosexual people, we're so frustrated. But I want to ask, what is the pain? What is the pain that at least women are in that you see?
There's so many. I think the main one is not feeling seen, not feeling acknowledged, not feeling like they can totally be there, not like there's such a big narrative that women are crazy or needy or hysterical.
Right.
And so a lot of women are completely gaslighting themselves in their own inner world. Like, I shouldn't be feeling this, I shouldn't be thinking this. And that spills out into their relationship. So I think what I see a lot playing out from the women's side is that they bottle up their shit, it explodes. The man then says, you're wrong for feeling what you're feeling.
Right.
And nobody can find each other anymore.
So I want to go into this one particular. So we're talking about there's huge pain. And like when I think about pain with men and women, I think about this literal psychological thing that's like logical. It's of earth. It's in our daily interactions, therapy, talking, whatever types of therapy. But then there's a subconscious pain, which is like reliving shit and horror and that you can't articulate it. It's abstract. And then if you go into the spirit, if you want to believe in that, if people don't believe in that, that's fine, because I think it goes into like maybe deeper than the subconscious, your essence and your deeper wills and your nature. There's this pain that's just, maybe as Jung called it, the collective conscious. And dude, it's so, as I am looking deeper at that myself, it's so deep. And we're all in this and we're speaking past each other. And I also think on that deeper kind of collective conscious level, we, like, no matter how much good I do, there's such a vast world, you know, that no matter how much good or bad I do, even there's such a vast world that we're working in. And it is kind of happening. Anyway, whatever. So let's go to this literal thing. I can go off on this, but a girl contacted me last week and she had a bad sexual experience. Now, this is like tough topic stuff. I get this wrong. I'm not trying to make a political statement. I'm actually talking about an individual's healing so that we could workshop this better. I'm not trying to rewrite the laws. I think the laws don't represent us well, not in a rebellion way, but when it comes to sex, it's terrible. So she had this.
You just froze up.
Oh, okay. You froze up too. Damn it. What the fuck? You're back. You're not
Steve,
back.
You froze up for a little bit. Yes, there we are. Good.
Fuck. That sucks.
Okay. I'm here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I talked to this female and she had this experience where it felt like she was raped. Now, literally, technically, according to the law, and I'm not a lawyer or whatever, an expert on this, but there was consent, right? There was consent.
Yeah.
You know, she wanted it. In fact, she told me before she had sex with him that she wanted to have sex with this guy.
Yeah.
So that's consent. They started to have sex. It didn't go well. They're both really young too. He didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to do. According to her, she freaked out. He didn't stop, and I've explained this to a few other people, and I wasn't there, you know, but let's just say this is like hypothetical, right? He kept going, and part of it she enjoyed, part of it she didn't. Afterwards, he thought it was all good.
Yeah.
Afterwards, she didn't think it was all good.
No.
I have not talked to the guy, but I almost think like, man, he's going like, that was cool, man, but she's crazy. She's handling this all wrong afterwards. To her, she is traumatized. Now, what are her outlets? You know, her outlets are talking to me, talking to a few other people. But when a woman feels that, when anybody feels that, they're going to isolate with it. It's so hard to freaking articulate. Anyway, there's a lot to this, but that all being said, in that situation, that pain is intense. What makes that painful? and explain, because men don't understand this, and I think that men need to understand it. We need to be responsible for each other. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's so many things I want to say in response to that story. One is, I think the story you just described is the one that so many women experience, and they experience it as sexual trauma, and then they tell themselves, but it wasn't really, right? And so they can spend years thinking, why do I dissociate completely when a man touches me? I don't get it, right? Nothing really bad happened. I must be exaggerating. Again, this like story of I'm crazy as a woman, and so everything I feel is wrong. When this like in my clients, this is the story I hear most of the time. It was weird. Something didn't feel good. I didn't really say about it. He didn't do anything wrong. And yet I'm in immense amount of pain and isolating. There's so much to say about consent, but I think for me, the main one is that there's 2 points for me that are really important. The feminine nature is to be yes, no, no, yes, no, yes, no. And that's something that outside of Tantra, we don't acknowledge. So I can say yes 1 minute and then all of a sudden think, actually, no, I don't want that. Or you can be having penetrative sex and all of a sudden think, okay, now it's done. I don't want this anymore. And I really wanted it 2 minutes ago. And actually now it's finished. We don't acknowledge this. We don't know how to be with that. We like, this is a game changer when I tell people that this is very normal.
Explain
feminine nature.
What is yes, no, no, yes, whatever? What does that mean?
Literally that you can be having penetrative sex and thinking, this is amazing. Yeah, I want this. And then 30 seconds later think, actually, now I don't anymore. I don't actually, I'm done. Body says no. And so in Tantra, for instance, we have a beautiful sense of just saying pussy says no. And then you don't have to explain it. So that you never have to explain your no or your yes. You just say something in my body just said no, and so this needs to stop. That's one part that like we in like the normal world, we do not acknowledge that consent isn't a stable thing. It goes up and down. The other complexity is that you can be a no to one thing and a yes to something else.
Right.
So when a guy asks for consent, right, the woman can be like, yeah, I want to be intimate with you, but actually I don't want to be penetrated. Or actually, I don't want to have this happen to me.
Right.
So that's the other complexity, that consent isn't this like one size fits all stable in time thing. And so situations happen where, you were a yes to one part and you maybe weren't to something else, and it did happen. And often I'm speaking now of this happening to women. Often than a woman. Okay, so women are mostly afraid that something physically will happen to them, right? The fear is in the vulnerability of the body. For the men, it's the vulnerability of ego, of being made fun of. So that's a very different dynamic. So during sex, literally somebody's in you. If you then are going to say no, there will always be a part of a woman's brain that says, I will be in danger if I say no.
Right.
So that keeps her from saying it.
Man, there's so much I could say this, but I want to keep you talking because it's interesting. So let's go back to a situation like that, because this is every woman, and the guy's clueless. And I don't think like that guy shouldn't be blamed, but he's dumb. He just doesn't get it. He's
right.
Man, education's such a weird word because it's almost like we need to enforce it or something, but man, there's outlets to have good sex in these ways and to understand them. And I'm totally guilty of it, even in longer term relationships too. Because
especially there.
Yeah, this happens big time in long term relationships.
Oh my God,
kills them.
Oh my God,
kills them. It's killed mine.
Yeah,
it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
So, what does she do? And we're talking about a younger woman, first couple sexual experiences, and this is very common. Where does she go with that?
You mean in terms of healing?
Yeah.
It's a complex process. It's very personal for everybody. I think the first thing is, the first layer you have to work on is shame. Because I think a lot of women that will go through an experience like this, and I personally went through that as well, I felt very ashamed for feeling so much for something that wasn't bad, right? Or not having said no, or just feeling shame for not being able to deal with the situation and it really affecting me And again, this kind of like gaslighting, like, oh, but nothing happened, right? Like that for me was the biggest one. It took me 15 years to speak about it, to go to somebody and say, something happened to me. We both were fine with it. I think it doesn't feel good. I wanted it. It didn't feel good. I'm still affected by that. It took me 15 years, I think, to take myself serious in that experience, to even acknowledge the fact that I was in pain. So the thing is to deal with the shame. The antidote to shame is to share it with somebody. So, 1 in 3 women have an experience like this. If it's not more, I think it's much higher.
I think it's much higher.
I've never met a woman that said, oh,
yeah.
I'm fine. We've never had anything.
Yeah.
I've never met a woman, to this day. So the first thing is to just speak to your women. Say, hey, what weird shit happened to you? What happened? How do you feel about that? And to notice that you are absolutely not alone. The other thing is, with these kind of things, we lose agency over our own body. So our bodies don't feel like they are ours anymore. It feels like we have to give something. And this is really the old narrative of, and I hate this part, but when you walk on the street and a guy says to you, oh, you should smile, right? Mm-hmm. That sounds really innocent, but deeper into that is that as a woman, you're kind of like this piece of art that needs to be entertaining all day. And so we lose agency of our own body, of what we want in that. So a part of the healing is really, I do a lot with Peter Levine's work, is really coming back to your own body, feeling that your body is yours. The most powerful exercise is literally just touching your body and being like, this is my hand. Oh yeah, this is my hand. Because people who go through sexual trauma sever themselves from their body or certain parts of their body.
Right.
Oh yeah, this is my hand. To feel again that is yours. And to do things in your life that you have physical agency. So Krav Maga, fights, like any kind of sport in that realm. A really powerful one is just walking on the street, and when somebody walks too close, that you move out of the way. You don't stand there, you move. It's simple things, getting the agency.
Dude, okay, so I'm going to re-listen to this and I'm going to make notes, because there's deeper topics to all this. There's stuff like where you're just saying like, the man, his ego is affected, the woman, it's danger. This has so much into the whole sexual dating dynamic that's huge.
Oh, yeah.
Where I get in a social dynamics and in terms of a sexual escalation thing, but in terms of I've always thought sex was so deep that it could change you in these massive ways.
Oh, yes.
That's an interesting healing process and road there. The ego and the image and the shame of a man, and then the protection and safety, but then also relationships, how this just, oh man, dude, it's crazy how things get messed up in this. I know.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I want to be a little bit of a contrarian here in this, just to go deeper with you, is getting back into your body as a woman. Yeah. People do that all the time. I see a ton of people get into yoga. I see a ton of people get into, there's a lot of women who do jujitsu, who it's this freeing thing, but then they don't work on the psychological part. So it's incomplete. Okay. So it's good that they're doing that. So to me, you saying the first step, getting into your body, is good. But I want to see if there's clarity with you saying that the first step is getting into your body, and what would the and be?
I'm really glad you're talking about that. So what we're missing often in therapy, coaching, all these things, that we just do one part of the brain. So the brain is really 3 parts. There's the narrative, which is your prefrontal cortex, which is what you do in psychotherapy, analyzing, speaking. You need to do that. So especially going through sexual trauma, you need to analyze every part of it and see what it did to you. Then there's the limbic part, which is expressing emotion. That's what men are good at. That's why they go to the gym. It's the grunting. It's the, crying. It's really physically letting shit out. And then the third one is the primal one. And that's really going through your fight, flight, and freeze, running away, breathing, breath work, sounding, these kind of things, shaking. And very few modalities take care of all 3 of them. So if you just go to yoga, and yoga's amazing. But if you just go to yoga and you think, I'm going to have a workout, great. You are only using a very small part of your brain, which is good. But you can also go to yoga and think, okay, what am I feeling? And really going into the physical sensation of the body and allowing it to release through sound. If you do that, your yoga will be an emotional release. And we don't leave space for that, right? Like men grunting in the gym is beautiful. That is very, very healthy. And we need to have that in more kind of like sports. But you need the analyzing. You need all of that. You need all these parts to actually move through it. Because if you just do one of them, like for instance, I once had a very bad plane ride, and I'm afraid of flying. I went through lots of therapy. I get completely that plane isn't scary, but when I get into a plane, my body is terrified, and I can't talk my way out of it because my prefrontal cortex knows that plane is fine, but my primal brain still thinks this is where I'm going to die.
Right.
And so that's really where modern therapy, I think, has completely missed the mark. This is where why a lot of people get stuck, in addiction and these kind of things, because yes, you could figure out a lot here, but this doesn't always work. It's not that powerful.
So it's interesting too, because when we get to this deep stuff, like deep behaviors like addiction, and whether that's sex or drugs or whatever, there are solutions that I think are amazing. And I was talking with somebody else, man, I really want to interview her. This is so cool. But she was kind of, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but we do the same type of addiction recovery stuff. And she gets it. And she's kind of like, man, I'm over it. So there's something more beyond this cognitive thing where you go into maybe the spirit or whatever, or something deeper. Mm-hmm. And for me, man, lately that's been so primal. Like, so I can't articulate it, but literally killing. And like, as I talk to you about it in the meditations and in the deep stuff I've done, it's deeper than anything. And so what's interesting about this is then I need guidance afterwards, because then it's just like, there's so much stuff. And I need guidance of people who've been there. So it's kind of weird. I have certain mentors that deal with legit therapy, and it's great, and talk to him about it. And then I have other mentors where it's more on that kind of coaching side, which can go into the abstract. And just to get back to the using the body, maybe being aware of your body, you need mentors of people who, I feel this. And I guess I want to know your thoughts on it. What mentors does somebody need when going through this stuff?
I want to make it bigger than mentors. It's really to be able to ruminate with somebody, right? The moment you are just sitting in your room and getting lost in your own thoughts, it's very difficult to actually process it. So the moment you even speak it out loud to another human being, it'll create some distance between you and whatever is happening or whatever thoughts you're having. It'll give you clarity. This is why therapy is so powerful. Like, even if you sit in front of a therapist and they ask you 2 questions in an hour, it's super powerful because you get to place something inside of you, outside of you. And then you can have a process with it. Yeah. So yes, mentors and coaches, but really just, this is really, we're human beings, we're social animals. We have to connect to each other. And so many people are living in isolation. Yeah. So if you are isolated in your inner world, you need a coach, a therapist, a friend, whatever. You need somebody who can see you, who can reflect back at you, who can hear you, just for the simple thing that then what is inside of you becomes outside of you.
Yeah. Yeah. God, there's actually a lot I want to talk to you about in there. But I want to kind of confront this too, is men. So you brought up a woman needs to heal. Yeah. A woman doesn't want to be objectified and seen. But to a man, this is a real important discussion that, one, I personally need to have. And I want to say I kind of get, but there's examples in my life where I totally don't get it, right? So a woman wants to be seen, but a man can objectify her. And I want to bring this up in context to a podcast I was listening to the other day about race and how people have passed down perceptions of culture and all this sort of crazy fucked up stuff. And to be seen as Asian, Black, or even white or whatever, it comes with a certain subconscious feeling and communication with, well, women, I mean, Jesus, the pain of a woman is insane. That, and men, don't shut off here, like, listen to it, because I don't mean anything like political. Nobody's putting you in a box. Nobody's forcing you to hear this. But if you can hear what that pain is from women, which I don't fully know and I can never understand, I think it's going to help, because they also probably want to hear your pain too. So that pain of a woman with image, how is that bad? Like when somebody's saying you should smile more. Hey, you should smile more, look pretty, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing is that a woman from a certain man wants to be totally objectified, right? Every woman longs for this. For the man that she chooses, she wants to be completely objectified by him. That's very sexy. She needs that nourishment.
Right.
What is wrong about this? The pain is that I feel dehumanized. I feel like I exist as entertainment, not as a human. So I feel like I am only there to serve some kind of non-human purpose, but not there in my uniqueness. That's the pain. That's the pain also in this race discussion, right? It's just that you are not considered for your unique human being. Mm-hmm. The interesting part to that is that I love being made very feminine. So this is why this is so tricky, right? I love it when a man opens the door for me. I love it old-fashioned things when he holds my suitcase or whatever, you know. I love being made feminine. So there's a very thin line there that, like, let me put it differently. It matters what kind of energy it's coming from, right? So is it the energy of like, I respect you as a woman, and you know, I'm equal to you, and I want to hold your suitcase for you, or is it you're this helpless thing and I'm going to do that for you? So that's a little bit where the energy is different. Is that answering your question?
This is. And
no, Steve.
Yeah, we're both frozen here for a second.
Are you here? Yeah.
I'm back.
Okay.
So no, yeah, you were frozen during a little bit of that, but to hear your words is important, because so here's how I put this into context, and it really revolves around the root of how I always taught sexual escalation for years, man. And like we live by this in my groups, and it's unique. This is terrible. In the dating scene, I've yet to see, now this is out, not Tantra or whatever, but in the dating and even dating guys who've done Tantra, it's always to overpower and overwhelm the woman. And it kind of has to be sold that way to a man, but I was always unique in the sense that it was dependent upon choice, that you hear no, and we can get into this, like, because no means no, right? But there's, that doesn't necessarily mean no stop. It means, it means pause. I don't feel safe. And then if you back off and take sex off the table and allow choice, that's key. So even in like, so choice is the thing. It's like if somebody's holding your bag, if they're holding your bag because you're an object and you're a woman that they know and control, then of course it's dehumanizing. But if they hold your bag and they say like, man, but you have the choice, and this can't be discussed, you know, it's like, hey, can I hold your bag? But men need to be okay with the rejection of that, because it's a choice. If we live without choice, we're stuck in judgment. And we go down the rabbit hole with all this sort of stuff, but I'm learning a lot actually from you. So I want to bring it back to your thing. So men will always say, yeah, but women dress like sluts, you know, and they want to be recognized. What is that? Because that's a misinterpretation too.
It's a very tricky conversation, so I want to be careful with my words. When I get dressed up sexy, it's first and foremost for myself. It's an adoration of my own femininity. It's an adoration of my own body. It's a creative outlet, actually, more than anything. It's a creative outlet. That's the first reason any woman will get dressed up nicely. It's oh, I feel really beautiful today, or look what I did with my body. It's art. Yes, sometimes it's nice to get seen, but I think the interesting thing is that I know who I want that acknowledgement from. I don't want it from everybody at all. And I think one dynamic that we're missing is that the woman chooses already who she wants to be adored by or seen by or pushed against the wall by. She already knows that. She will let you know that. So if you have gotten zero signals from her, she's not in your area. She's probably not in your area.
Mm-hmm.
right? So a woman already has decided if she wants that from you. And so if I get dressed up nicely, even, and I want to flaunt that, or I want to go outside with that, right? And that's like, there's no shame in that. Again, I don't want it from every guy at all. At all. I don't want it from every guy. There are certain men that I would like that from, and they will know.
But then also there's a thing where a man who has zero experience with women, or it's a deficit in his area, he needs to learn how to read that, because he doesn't know how to read that.
Yes.
And so that you're going to fail as a man. You're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to get rejected. You're going to misread things. You may piss women off. So then the discussion is, okay, like, how do you handle that? You know, how do you, and how do you handle that as a man? That doesn't mean you handle it in the way that necessarily women tell you. And let me just be clear about that, because women are telling you something, but you don't need to handle it by overly apologizing. You need to apologize like a man. Like if we let a woman dictate your masculinity too much, you're going to get all skewed. And if we let men dictate women's, in this case, sexuality too much, it's going to get all skewed. So we have to learn to translate. So there's that. A man who doesn't know how to read it, he's going to make mistakes. And then is there a place in this? And this ties into the bad sex, you know, the taking of sex, the wrong feeling that we were just talking about. People are going to make mistakes with this. It's almost a given if you're sexually active.
Yes.
So what do we go ahead?
Yeah. I've spoken about this before in podcasts. I think the one thing I want to teach everybody in sex is to have room for the awkwardness. We think sex needs to be this like easygoing thing, but actually no, sex is super awkward. Shit will go wrong. Things will not go well.
Yeah.
You know, like how often have I heard that people don't want to ask for the condom because it will break up the flow? Like, fuck, you know, break up the flow and come back. You know, it's this, we're so deadly afraid for discomfort when that's inherent to being intimate, right? You're literally getting naked, you're interacting. Of course, things are going to get uncomfortable, awkward. So if we as a society would leave more space for, okay, I can handle uncomfortable. We can laugh about it, right? Put humor in that. We can laugh about it and then we can pick it up again. It doesn't become this thing that has to stay cute and sexy and powerful and whatever. It can much more, there's much more room for whatever is there to come up. And I wanted to reply to another part of you, like, what is the masculine response? Because I completely agree with you. There are a lot of guys, the really nice guys, that are so afraid of doing it wrong and then go, sorry, sorry, sorry. And that doesn't get a lady boner up, right? Like, that's just not very sexy.
How do we get the lady boner up?
So how do you get the lady boner up? Like, what's sexy in the masculine energy is kind of this thing, like John Wineland, David Data speak a lot about this. It's like, I see what's going on here and this is where we need to go. So it's saying like, okay, woman, I hear that you don't want this, but like, what is it that you would like to do? Because I still want to connect to you. You know, it's kind of still taking control. Like, oh, I noticed that you did really enjoy the massaging. Should we go further in that? Right. It's still taking control of the moment, but really listening to her and taking her into account into that. That's a really sexy masculine thing to do. And then you are still in the lead. You are still leading the situation. And I think a lot of guys that like the kind of the old fashioned masculine is this idea that you always need to be in your leadership position, but it doesn't take into account that everybody that's involved. And so I think modern masculinity is really, I see you, I see me, this is where I think we should go. And not forcing it, not pushing it.
Yeah. So interesting, because pushing and force can be a very masculine thing. So when this girl was breaking down to me her sexual experience and how traumatic it was, that guy could have been more forceful in it, but done right. Right. So if he took some steps back and allowed, once again, choice to come into play, allowed things to calm down, man, it's interesting what you say about the condom, because there's so much to say. Dude, that
right
is how many times, well, I'll speak for myself. How many times have I been like, I should use a condom? And then it's like, well, let's go, you know, like, it's so
don't
easy.
Want to fuck this up.
And it's not even that. There's an overwhelming urge to go. Right. And that's different for a man and different for a woman, or I assume for a woman. Yeah. But for a man, it is like, go. I have to. And like, you can only see. Yeah. And for a woman, I think it's just so the overwhelm. it's beautiful to see, but men, it's just like really go take all this shit. And women, it's like, oh man, it's like so inviting. Anyway, it's hard to snap yourself out of that, but to build some faith that you can, and then build other connections is key. And then also, I mean, sex without condoms is like way better skin sensitivity wise. But if you're making sex just about the orgasm or just about your dick or the pussy or whatever, you're not necessarily going deep enough. And then there's also like really good condoms. There's way different condoms, man. My Everhard turned me on to some really good condoms. So yeah. Anyway, so dude, it's there were a couple times where I didn't think it was on, and that's what you want.
That's what you want.
At least for a man. Pitch. I don't know exactly if it was better or worse for the female, but like, but anyway, so where was I with this? Man, where were we? Because there's just so many different points that we could go in whatever directions. Anyway.
Can I reply to some part of what you just said?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the way I try to, so I work a lot with women on healing their inner dude, because a lot of women have a very toxic masculine internalized that isn't nice. That's very, very rough. That's demanding. That's pushing. That's criticizing. And so the way I get to them is you have a masculinity that's super rigid and you have a masculine that's supportive. So the rigid masculine in guys as well says, I have to go to the gym every day and that has to happen. You know, it's just really like, I fucking do that every day. That sounds good, but it's actually, right, it's not kind. It's not taking into account what actually is there. The supportive masculine says, yes, I commit to going to the gym every day, but I feel into that day what's the right thing to do.
Where does that toxic masculine come from? Does it come from interactions with men, or does it come from her masculine? Where do you assume?
I mean, it starts with the father. It starts with society. It starts just with, you know, it is very, very much in the Carl Jung sphere, but pretty much if your dad didn't acknowledge your femininity, that's what you will internalize. So if your dad didn't acknowledge that you are a woman, that's what you will do to your own inner world as well. So as a woman, you may then become like a tomboy or super like, I don't know what to do, I'm lost, right? That can happen. Or if he does acknowledge your femininity, but it feels weird, that will all express in your later life. So that's really where it starts. But, you know, it's also society. It's like we have a completely over-emasculated society in a very toxic sense. Like everybody has issues with this. It's like extremely performance driven. You know, and everybody's suffering from this, and it's actually not what masculinity is. I think masculinity is actually way more supportive. It's like, what can I do to make your day easier?
Dude, it's yeah. So let me get into this. So first off, I remember what I was going to say, because this is important, I think, for men to hear, is that if you're in that situation with a woman and she's saying stop, if you know what to do, and it's fairly easy, and I can't like go into it in full detail here, but I have tons of videos on it. But if you take a step back, like, look, when you enter resistance in sex, during sex, before sex, courtship, it's a good thing. Most of the time means you are going to have a great sexual experience and connection with this woman, because it's so powerful. She's saying stop. And what's her stop? It usually, and I could be wrong on this, so this is my male interpretation of it, of just lots of experience in teaching, but it's not from the woman. It's just a men's interpretation from women, is that it's like, this is not unique. You don't know me. You do this with everybody.
Yes.
What is this all saying? This is saying, see me. That's what it's saying. See me. So if we can take a step back, and it's a real quick kind of technique, so to speak, but this is how we teach it, is like, as soon as you notice resistance, and I always say it in this example, you're kissing a girl you've never had sex, and she's like, wait. And that always happens when it gets too much. Like when she's like, oh, and you're like, yeah, let's go. She's like, wait, right? So if you just say like, hey, we don't have to do anything, like nothing needs to happen. I don't want to be making out with your fears or your
Yeah.
whatever. Now I'm a guy, so I like to move forward and I'm talking to men. So then I just jump straight to the dick. Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah.
But then I'll just be like, but look, just kiss me how you want to kiss me and I'm not going to kiss you back. And when she can fully show herself her full expression of that kiss, then I'm like, God, look at my dick. Look at this. Do you want this to be yours? And I fucking go way off on that. It's just, I want to speed things up because also I think if we do like each other, the sooner we have sex, this is controversial and I want your take on it. I feel the sooner that we have sex and that we like each other and we can safely do it and all that stuff, the better it is to get to know each other. Otherwise we're lying, you know?
Yeah. I think this is a very strange thing that we've created, like that you should only have sex on your third date. Like have sex when you want it. If you want to do it right away, do it right away. That doesn't mean anything. They say like you can't build up a love relationship if you have sex on the first date. That's ridiculous. That's just not true. It's not true that a man will lose interest with you if you sleep with him right away. Well, if that happens, then he's not your guy.
Yeah.
You know?
That's not
Then he's
true.
looking for something else. Yeah. And actually you want to be intimate and have sex when you want it. If you want it and you want it after an hour, like this is your body. You're an adult. Go for it.
Right. And that's how you take ownership of your body. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not saying to be a slut. You're not saying to misrepresent yourself. You're saying the opposite of that. I really want people to understand this, and men too, you know, if a girl sleeps with you right away, unless she didn't have choice, then it's a bad decision. But if she had choice, that's a true expression. And let me bring it back to this because you say true masculinity. I want to say a couple things here. So I've lived a very man's life. I could have lived more of a man's life. Was real rowdy, got in a lot of fights. I fucked a lot. I still am all down for that. But now in my life, like I want really good sex. I've had good relationships. You touched on a lot, which I actually want to bring back about my own relationships and how I'll call it this weird sex thing, but we'll come back to it of where communication doesn't fully happen and gets misinterpreted and all crazy. But so I've had all of that. One thing that I get from masculinity that's huge is all that fighting stuff is cool. I'm not hating on it. Like toxic masculinity is there for a reason. When I'm in a locker room or on my calls, we talk mad shit, man. But we talk mad shit and we'll say some things we could never be president, you know, or whatever, you know, we'll say some things that are really horrible if in the public, but we need that. And I think women should have the same as that. But one thing that you said about being a man is you have to hold space. And that sounds like some hippie bullshit, but your value. So this is my interpretation of what you said is if a woman is feeling something, if a man is feeling something, if my son is feeling something, I need to be there for him. And it goes beyond than just the rock. It's that I can be there and let all of the emotion pass. And you know what's funny about that? That's exactly what I need from a woman, you know, but it's done differently. I need to let all my emotion pass, all of my feeling, all my fear, my ego, my shame to pass, to purge in a woman. But a woman needs to do that to a man. And the quality of a man, I feel, is different. Tell me about that.
The first thing I want to say is the difference between holding space and what we think a man should do. So when you're listening to your woman and you're trying to fix it for her, that may sound like you're helping her, but the weird thing is that you're making it about you then.
Right.
Actually, you're making it about you.
Right.
And so there's nothing wrong with giving solutions or helping her out, but she will ask for it when she wants that. So you need to give her that agency. So I literally will say like, okay, I had a really shitty day, blah, 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 and I will do my purging. And then my partner often waits for me to say, okay, so what do you, and then there's an invitation. Or he can say,
could you
like,
repeat
okay,
that?
Sophie.
Sorry, it cut for a second. Could you repeat that? Your partner's, then it cut.
My partner will wait for me to say, what do you think I should do? And then I'm actually inviting him and inviting his opinion. And so there's agency again, right? The big pain in women is not having choice. That's the big wound in women, not having choice. So when you give unsolicited advice, this is really the case for anybody, not just masculine and feminine, you will give them the idea that they cannot do it themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so this is really the issue, I think, with a lot of men, and what is holding space then. Holding space is not giving solutions unsolicited. It's actually listening, because when you do that, you're making it about you, and a woman feels that. A woman feels much more than a man does, and she will pick up on that, like, oh, this became a power thing all of a sudden, and I'm just telling you about my day. So what you can do as a guy is just say, what can I do for you right now then?
So check this out. Every lady listening to this is like, oh my God, if only, or like, I'm going to tell my man this, and she's going to send it to him. And then the dude's going to listen to it and be like, what the fuck is she talking about? And dude, like, even though I'm going to give my take on this, it doesn't mean I do it perfectly by any means, because it's hard shit.
No.
So
yeah,
you're saying, so in a dysfunctional relationship, this wouldn't work. All right. You're on the same page with your partner in this.
Yeah.
And that's key, that you guys can communicate within this. Because if my partner is to something, not fully opening up to me, and then goes and purges her shit, and then I come back and I go, can I help you? Or, are you ready for me, or whatever?
What would you need?
Yeah. What would you need from me?
What would you need from me? Yeah.
And let's say she has resentment, contempt that she doesn't build up, which is common. I mean, this is common, right? It's fuck you. You're trying. Yes. So what's interesting, in order to get to this spot, men and women, man, I think there's so much, like, you need to dive deep and realize that it's a complex thing. Or let's say it's like a massively codependent relationship. Let's say it's an abusive relationship. Yeah. Let's say there's some baggage of him being an asshole and be overbearing, or she is, or whatever. And you come in and you say, like, are you done? Or are you ready for me? I keep saying it wrong. Are you ready for me is great, right? But if you say that and there's all this baggage that you have, it ain't going to work. So where does a couple like that start?
Okay. For the man, honestly, like, this is a whole other discussion, but a man doesn't have to take everything from. Absolutely not. She can show her anger to you. Sorry, I broke up, didn't I?
Yeah. A man doesn't have to do everything for a woman, is what you said?
Doesn't have to take everything from the woman.
Okay.
And so that's not to, like, get into the old masculine of, like, you need to be a cute little thing, but he doesn't have to accept everything. So if she's name calling, if she's judging him, with love, this is also the modern masculinity, with love, tell her, I notice there's lots of shit going on. We can't have a normal conversation like this. It doesn't make sense to go into the discussion because it's just two angry children shouting at each other, right? Like, there's no sense in the discussion. So acknowledge her with love. Like, don't judge her. Don't make her wrong for what she's feeling, because then again, you're going to egg it on. But just say, like, we are not going to go into the details of this discussion if we're both in judgment, right? It's not going to work. And so this is where the healthy masculine again comes in, of taking control of that situation, acknowledging her with love, but taking control of it, saying, I'm not like this. Nope. Men. So this is really a thing in men. Like, I see it everywhere. Like a man has to hold for the woman. And so she needs to be just able to let loose everything on him. No, she does not.
Yeah.
And as a man, you stand for that. Like, it's very sexy. Actually, I find it when a guy says, I know that you're angry, but now you are throwing it at me. And no, not like that.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because then it goes into a point with men where they go into power. This, in this situation, I don't get there that much, but if I go into power, it gets pretty bad. Right. Because I've just had it so much that language is so in me. I'm making excuses for myself, but, like, dude, I can get carried away with it, because if it's like, wait a minute, you're not saying that, you're saying this. And if I get confrontation, I'll turn into anger rather than communication. And because it works, and that's not necessarily good. Yeah. So if I need to shut somebody up in that, it's real rare, but dude, it gets pretty crazy. So I'll just be like, no, man, you're saying this, you're saying this. And that's what a girl says. And I'll just fucking, I'll tear in. Right.
Yeah.
So, and that doesn't do any good. So when we see that happen with people, that needs to be fixed and addressed before we can move into what you're actually talking about, which is holding the space, the exchange, and allowing that process to happen. I just think there's a lot of people, like, these answers are great, right? They're great.
Oh yeah.
But
then real life,
and they're hard for me to live with, even with some awareness. And they're probably hard for everybody with awareness, because we all have to be on the same page, and that's hard. That does not happen enough.
Yes. Yeah.
How would you say? Go ahead. Please go ahead.
I think when there's still lots of resentment and lots of stuff like underneath the surface, you need moments in your relationship where you both can purge to each other and to not make each other wrong for it. And that's a really tricky thing to do. But the thing is, like, if she's angry at you, I don't know, for not really being there or not showing up or not taking out the trash, instead of going into a discussion, hear her out. And that means you have to get quiet. You have to, like, maybe shut up for a few minutes and just let her talk and really hear what she's saying. And that doesn't mean you have to agree with it. But here's the thing, like, in relationships, we're actually terrible at listening to each other. We're always, like, trying to defend something. And so people are just in counterattacks and attacks and counterattacks. And so we call that war zone. It's a war zone, right? It's just two people trying to defend something, whatever it is. And how do you get back to love zone? How do you get back to, like, we're partnering in this? Like, yeah, this is a tricky situation, but we're partnering in this. Yes, I know I don't take out the trash and that annoys you. We're partnering in this instead of me trying to defend that I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So for that, in all of this, the first step is often you have to purge it a bit. You have to, like, let it out and have it be seen and not be negotiated. And that's very tricky. That's a thing that a lot of couples don't do.
Well, it's tricky. And also, if you do it, it's like opening up a can of worms, to allow purging, to see that, like, you take any man and they go, a woman remembers all this stuff, from like 5 years ago. Time I forgot this. But so right there, that's like purging light, man. It's like she got so mad she remembered about all the times you didn't take out the trash, or like you neglected something huge, and it's like, that's when I started hating you and resenting you. To the man, he's like attacked. He's like, what a crazy, it's like, she's crazy. She's crazy. Like, what the fuck? And like, goes to the other dude's like, what the fuck? So the purging didn't work, or the purging wasn't heard, wasn't listened to.
It wasn't heard because the other person's already going into their counterattack. So the tricky part in here is to not respond. So in Tantra, like, one of the biggest exercises, set a timer. You get 5 minutes to talk and I am not allowed to respond. I am just going to listen to you, and then we're going to switch sides. Because then you actually have to listen to each other instead of thinking, yeah, she's crazy. Like, fuck, that's not what I did. Right? If you don't get the chance to even say that, you actually have to listen to that person. So you'll have a very different kind of conversation. And also, when you feel that your partner actually wants to listen to what you are saying, you will not try to fire at them. The whole conversation becomes softer. Like, if my partner is actually there to listen, I'm not going to try to hurt him with my words as much. And even when I have the feeling that he doesn't want to listen to me, that's when I get vicious.
Get louder. Yeah.
Right? Because I want to be heard. So I'm just going to make it angrier. I'm going to make it uglier.
Then sometimes I think people need to break up. Like, there's been relationships where I've gotten out of, and then everybody's like, man, that should have been a long time ago, dude.
People stay too long.
Yeah.
People stay too long.
So what is the goal? Is the goal to stay in your relationship? Basically every man not every man, but a lot of men with wrecked relationships. I think a lot of men that listen to you, that hear your message, because seeking the feminine and those types of things are going, they have guilt over their relationships. And part of it, I want to say, like, man, maybe you shouldn't have been in that relationship. Like, it's okay. Even though society says it may not be okay.
Yeah.
What is the goal? Is it to keep a relationship? Is it to be able to let it pass? Is it to be free as a human being? What is the goal here?
I think relationships are, okay, this becomes a bit more spiritual. No, actually, it's more also Carl Jung. We fall in love with somebody because, or we are attracted to somebody because it makes us whole in a way, right? So there's something in us that we're rejecting or that we've lost touch with, and there's this person, and especially the loves that feel really intense, like I've known you my whole life, or I'm complete now, or everything's okay now. That's often a bonding coming from all of a sudden completing something inside of yourself with this other partner. At a certain point, that may be done.
Right.
That may be finished, and we don't see relationships like that. So somebody might totally feel like a soulmate for 1 year, and then it's over because you have completed it. And to allow that to happen, to say, thank you, you gave me what I needed. It's now in me. I don't need you for that anymore. Thank you. We're okay. And some people will move through cycles of that, but a lot of relationships, that's where they should end. And people stay together much longer than that. When actually the thing you needed to do together for your own psyche has already completed.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, dude, it's so crazy because people do the craziest shit when they break up, including myself. Like we're all, you know, I mean, like it's not, I don't want to say this in judgment. I want to say this in unity with everybody out there. And then like, also, I think there should be a message, like you can get to the other side. You can get to the other side and you can change these things. And they're very important, I think, for your life. But all of that is like this out of touch with self thing. And when I think about some of my relationships, it's like, man, it's good that they ended, but there was excess damage. And I want to bring it back to this because I want to share this with you because I'm really learning a lot in a lot of ways. And I just don't know, I share shit about my life all the time. So I'm an expert when it comes to like sex and dating and all this sort of stuff, but I'm also a human being. And these things go so the world of sex is way bigger than me. I don't own it. I'm at the minimum a pawn of it. And when I mean I am a pawn in it, when you know, like Isaac Newton said, you know, we're babies in front of an ocean playing with seashells. That's how that's at best I can be with sex. And so I was in this situation where it's sex, we had disputes. Now, I feel the relationship on, let's say, I love the Carl Jung thing because he just gives you the legitimate scientific permission to get spiritual, right? So he's the best transition point, but hard as hell to read. But in that, I feel that we were done. And there's a lot of peace with that, but there was holding on for a lot of reasons. But one of the things happened sexually where she was out of sync and she would try and tell me, but couldn't. And these are some of the things where we don't have anybody talking to us about this in culture. No. And I have my groups, and even those are not good enough, but way better of an outlet. You know, like I said, sex is such a vast thing. The psyche is such a vast thing. How we shape ourselves sexually is such a vast thing. My groups are designed for that, and they're very good. But still, we're babies, you know, playing on a beach. Yeah. So she couldn't articulate that. When we split, it was the biggest thing of like, I feel like a whore. I feel like this. And I'm like, I never meant, and she would tell me this, but you can't hear it. Even when we were together, like, this isn't right. Okay, let's stop. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. You know, same thing is that we were talking about with the younger kids having sex, and like, she's saying it's not good. And he's saying, but it's good. And he walks away from that with one experience and she walks away with it with another, but they were both in the experience and saw a different reality. And so those types of things happened at a deeper level with mine. And it happened quite a bit. And like you say this, and it's so easy to fall into this. And I think one, it's very hard to talk about. Two, because it's so abstract. Two, nobody's talking about it. I mean, you're talking about it with me. I talk about it with the guys on my calls, and still it can happen in those ways. And three, you have to be on the same page with it. You know, I really feel that that's very important. So that kind of pain, I guess, from a woman, you're frozen. You still hear me? Damn it. Always on the cliffhangers. You're there. I hear your audio.
Darn it.
I hear
back.
you.
What did you say?
No, I stopped myself. So I want to get into
Okay,
that kind of pain with a woman. Where does she go
Yeah.
with it? Right.
Yeah.
And then if you can bring it back to the man, where does he go with it? Like, how do we solve this? How do we acknowledge it? What's the solution? What could have been done differently? Those types of things. Because, man, I get lost in it. And this is a world I'm very versed in.
Can you say specifically what pain you mean now?
Okay. So a woman walking away from that.
Yeah.
Feeling that sex was fucked up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In the questions about trauma, I don't know if I put this in there, but sometimes when we receive sexual trauma as a man or a woman, we become oversexed. And it's real common, like a young kid gets abused before sex is a thing, and then it's immediately a language and searching for an answer in it. That does not get talked about a lot. So then when it carries over into a girl in her early 20s and a guy in his early 20s, and they go through a bad sexual experience, men and women get oversexed in different ways. So that experience that we described at the beginning was from a woman, and she may get oversexed afterwards. A guy, if he receives trauma, which he didn't really in this, he might get oversexed in a different way. But then post in a deeper relationship that there's a bigger commitment, there could be backlash, and it's not just oversexedness, it's different shame. So what does a woman do to deal with that sort of pain?
The first thing I want to say is to acknowledge that it's always the case that two people are having a completely different reality. So it can absolutely be that a woman went through a situation and she feels maybe raped or whatever, sexually abused.
Right.
And a man thought that was fine. You know, that's right. That's okay. That's part of the human experience. The same when you are breaking up from a relationship, you might have been in an abusive relationship and the other person was not. And that's really hard to wrap your mind around, especially like if you were abused, to say like, oh, but he had a totally okay relationship, yet I feel I'm still reeling from it. And to accept that you can have two different realities and yours is still just as true as theirs. Right. And you might not ever come to the same part. And so this is also in sexual abuse. Like, if it felt like abuse to you, it was. And that doesn't make that person respond, or like that was intent to create that for you, but it was. The other thing that you're talking about is that people can get oversexed for sure, because if you have probably at a certain point associated pain with sex, and so your body is trying, or your system is trying to recover that, and sex can then actually be a beautiful way to heal from that pain if you do it in a conscious kink setting or whatever. That's a whole different story. Where was I going with this? I just lost
that, but that's a good thing. So people don't oh man, there's this guy I talked to and he's great. And he said, we've impoverished sexuality. And he talks about whores and prostitution and gigolos and porn. And I'm like, hey dude, I'm cool with all that shit. And he's like, this is not what I mean. I mean that sex is so powerful. It creates life. It creates children. It creates thoughts. It creates relationships. And we bring our trauma or insecurities into sex to the point where we are fucking to heal ourselves, but we're not even honoring the healing, you know?
Yes. Fuck, man. Yes.
Yeah, dude. And that's weird because it's like sex is great. And I can go out to a bar and pick up a chick and have sex and have it be great, but that's too many steps away from just simply going, I want to feel peace with you. You know, like to be conscious about it and to honor it. And hey man, sometimes you got to go and fuck and be all crazy, but like to feel, I don't know, to get back to that healing part or that deep communication or that unification of the man and woman, I think is really, people get away from
so
that.
sex has a I think always the potential to be deeply shamanic, deeply. So it can be like your deepest trauma healing, your deepest healing, whatever you were moving through, like, you know, and we don't acknowledge it for that. That's why I feel you so much when you said there. We don't acknowledge it for that. And you can do that on a one-night stand. You can do that with your long-term lover. Like you can, that capacity is always there, but to get there needs to be space for whatever comes up. So for instance, crying during sex is amazing. It's beautiful. I barely feel my emotions. I only feel them during sex, to be very honest. I barely feel them in a normal day because sex brings me into my body. So a lot of people that are very like live in their head, sex is a way that actually brings them into their body, and then they will feel their emotions. So I can have lots of anger come up, and I'm luckily now with a partner that can just be like, okay, be angry. And I'm like, okay, I have to resist you for like a few minutes because I feel so much anger and it has nothing to do with you. And to allow sex to be a vehicle to release that is so powerful. And we, like, when you're not aware of this, you will have a few encounters where this accidentally happens, but you can actually do that consciously. And that's just by being with what is. So if you are, I don't know, very quiet and mute, to be with that, right? I have a tendency to dissociate because of also some not so nice sexual experiences earlier in my life. I have a tendency to dissociate. What I now do during sex is I let that be. Yeah. Instead of making myself wrong for the dissociation, I say, I notice I'm checking out. Okay, where are you going to, Sophie? Okay, I'm just going here. What is the thought? My thought is, I don't want to be here. It has nothing to do with you, but my thought is that I don't want to be here. Okay, so let me stop everything, but let me stay with you. And let's just play it out. What's happening? What's the next thought? What's the next thought? And honestly, I healed it quicker during my, let's call it, sexual sessions than I did during therapy. So when we acknowledge sex for that, that's beautiful. And that also brings me back to the point that I just forgot, that often when people get oversexed as a response to sexual trauma or abuse, you will see that they can get really mute in long-term relationships.
Get really mute?
That it will die out, that it will like completely disappear all of a sudden because they actually have to connect with somebody, and then that's actually scary.
Right. You know, what's interesting is, because I'll say this a lot, like, you know, people talk about psychedelics and stuff like that. And you know, like, I'm a fan. I'm not like and that's a whole nother can of worms too, because like people can really harm themselves with it and so on, but they can do tremendous good with it. And I think like just listening to a podcast or two on it is not like, it's a way of life. If you're going to go into those things, and where I see people really heal from it, they honor it for years. It's not just like you drop acid or do ayahuasca and you're good. You do the work afterwards. But that helps in one way. I think therapy helps in another, community helps in another, sharing helps in another, but sex, I've always said, sex is beyond, but they're all different. And therapy without sex, or like, you know, maybe you need both, but with me sexually, like, man, I could not feel, I couldn't emote until I did it. And then you hear people in the therapeutic community say that's a dysfunction. And I get what they're saying. And then, you know, I go through that process. And when I say I go through that process, I'm not done. You know, as long as you're breathing, you're always doing these things. But then I realized it's like, oh no, man, I was just somebody that's what it took to feel sexually, to open up my heart in that way, and to breathe, and to have empathy on this different level. It's what it took. So what, you know? Whereas before it was just like, you know, oh man, this is all I can do. And then I see, you know, for myself in addiction, and I see other people, it's like they drink and they go crazy and they get violent. Okay, legally that's bad. You know, with your relationships, that's bad. That has this consequence. But in this kind of self way, man, you're an imprint of what you need to work on. This is just not the most efficient way to do it. Like, I get why you're drinking. I get why you're killing yourself with this stuff. I want to ask you this because, and it's almost been an hour, and I want to keep talking to you. It's a real interesting discussion because we're getting into a very spiritual side of it. And a lot of people are going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? And other people might be totally listening. But when, oh man, no, let me change this. What's the biggest thing you've killed off or changed or turned a corner? What's the biggest shamanic thing you've entered in the realm of sex and relationships?
So 5 years ago, I lost my mom, I lost my relationship, I lost my dog, I lost my health probably in the same week. It was deeply traumatic. I felt like I there was just nothing left in life. I honestly wasn't so sure I wanted to live anymore, because I thought, if this is it, this isn't cool. In the depths of that existential crisis, I met men who fucked me through it. And I was not trying to date him. I was not in a relationship with them. They were my lovers, and I'm still deeply grateful for them. And I would never want to date them. That's not the connection that we had.
Right.
But
yeah.
Something happened there that made me go through all that grief and all my pain and all my really existential pain with a man. It's a beautiful word called rapture. I think women are beautifully designed to do that. I would rapture during sex. And so there was just this complete surrender, ugly wildness. And in that rapture, I healed, because I could move through the bigness of what I was feeling. And that's what sex is.
Could you
best designed for.
Define what rapture means?
In the most simple terms, it's when you lose control during sex. It's really when you think, I've lost control. This is it. Like I can't think anymore. Like whatever is happening, I've broken apart.
Cool.
I've completely lost control.
Perhaps a discussion for later, but this ties into it. I think sex has a uniquely private quality to it.
Yeah.
And there is an openness too that can be public, but it has a uniquely private thing.
Yeah.
Not for any law, not for why society says so, but for what you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
If somebody misinterpreted that, that's why like so many people go and like, I hear this more with women, but with men too, it's like, man, I'm never going to see that girl again. So I'm just going to, you know where I hear it? This is so funny, man. I'll hear it with my guy friends who have hot wives, and they'll have affairs with women who are just not that hot. And they'll tell me, they're like, Steve, man, you've seen my wife. I can't treat her like a pig, but that girl, like, or something like that. And as fucked up as that sounds, there's an element of that with men, and you could go into like how that's wrong or right or what could be the solution, but it needs to be private.
Yeah.
Because you got to go into the darkness alone with that.
Yeah.
Trauma and sex, it's something that I want to talk about with you more, and maybe not for this time, but one of the questions that I sent you was like, how is trauma through sex different than other types of trauma?
I find it hard to define. I've gone through different types of trauma myself. I think the sexual trauma feels different because, it really involves something going into your body, or at least something being done with your body. And it makes that you lose the agency over you. And I think that's also the trauma. I don't know if you get in a car accident, it's also that you've lost agency over your body and have sexual different.
Well, let me make it specific here.
Yeah.
So you said at one point you announced something to other people that happened 15 years ago in the past. I don't know what that is. You don't need to tell me, but that sounded like it was sexual trauma. Then your mom passing away, although your ex, you broke up at the same time, but your mom passing away, that's non-sexual trauma. So how were those different? And they happened at different ages, I get, but how were those different?
Yes. Okay. Very, very, very good question. How it's different is that I feel like I could have done something about it. So a lot of the healing had to come through having to understand that I was a victim.
Right.
Even if I could have done something about it. Even if he didn't have any intention to do something wrong, whatever. That I was still a victim, to acknowledge the victimization. I think if you were in a car accident or your mom losing your mother, whatever, there was a certain level of closure I had, maybe not the car accident, but the losing a mother. There's a certain level of closure because, there's nothing I could have done to prevent that. So I didn't feel like I had an active role in it happening. In sexual trauma, I think a lot of people deep process around it is just, could I have stopped it? Should I have said something? You feel like you've done it to yourself. And so a lot of the healing is coming to terms with yourself, and also coming to terms where you were genuinely victimized and understanding the difference.
Dude, there's so many levels to that, and I'm sorry to keep going here, but like
No,
I
keep
kind
going.
of got to is
Mm-hmm.
I think it can go beyond, not necessarily with you, but I think when I think about myself, like it's not just that I was a victim, it's how I handled the victimhood, because a lot of it I don't even know it, but I'm punching that clock. Right. So I don't realize like, okay, this happened to me and I think I could have done something about it. There's that. And you're not limiting it to that. I'm sure it goes deeper than those things, but like, then it's like, okay, I like this now. I like having sex in these ways. I like power in these ways now. I like whatever in these ways now. And I don't even see it until something way down the road. Like a relationship gets fucked up, or a friend, or I end up in jail or something where I have to inventory myself. And I go like, man, I started getting in fights, or started doing drugs in these ways, or I started having all these affairs, or whatever weird, like started moving into prostitution or prostituting myself, whatever, like crazy shit. Right. And I look at that and then I go, man, why am I doing that? And I start taking responsibility for why I'm doing that. And then I go, fuck, man, I was punching the clock of that thing and didn't even know it the whole time. And I think when we move into victimhood, it's subtle. So there's some people where it's like, obviously I'm a victim, give me my rights. But then there's these subtle things, which are really crazy. And then there's another thing spiritually. So if we get into that kind of Jungian side, because that's kind of where it does sit with me spiritually, and I'll do like some shamanic stuff, which get pretty crazy. Check this out. One of the insights for me was like, I did do that to myself. I sought out to be hurt because I thought that was me. And it's like deep at this crazy level, right? And that's where I'll get with sex too. That's where like so on a literal psychological level, like I need to go through that process of, no, man, I was a victim. Take the blame out. How am I reliving this in my life? Okay, I literally wasn't choosing it. And then there's this crazy deeper one where it's like, I did choose it. And then there are two different roads, and I had to take them separately. I could not be on that road where I discovered I did do this because without, see if you can follow me.
I absolutely
You talk. But you know what I'm saying? Like if I didn't get to the cognitive cerebral part, at least for myself first, I couldn't get on the part where it's like, I see how I manifested this, and it would be totally fucked up. Like it would be like, wait, you're saying I did this, you fucking asshole? Fuck you. But
that's spiritual bypassing.
Right.
If you do that too soon, if too soon you say, I don't know, like a girl was raped as a child, and you say, oh no, but that was her karma. She wanted to do that, or that's what her soul wanted. That's spiritual bypassing. So you have to acknowledge your victimization. You have to go through that process, like a grief processing. You have to go through like, where was I genuinely victimized, and to not make it go away. Right? To not talk your way out of it, because it's very difficult to accept that you can be victimized. Right? That's a really rough thing to have to acknowledge. So you have to go through that process. Like when people say, oh, you have to forgive. No, forgiveness happens naturally. You wake up one day, you think, I'm okay with this now. You cannot force forgiveness. Like you cannot force the stage that you just mentioned where you say, I see how I manifested that. I see what I did there. You have to go through the pain first of what happened to you. You cannot force that stage. And that's really, I think in a lot of things, when people try to process, they're trying to skip steps. And that's where Carl Jung is great at. You start to reject a part of you, right? I reject the part of me that created pain, because that's ridiculous, right? Why would I want to do that? No, because you needed to. There was a reason.
Right.
I'm reading an amazing book at this. It's called Existential Kink. It's exactly about this.
God,
amazing.
Dude. Yeah.
Amazing.
Man, you're a wealth of knowledge. This is amazing. I really like it. What a cool discussion. Like it's good stuff.
Yes.
I
keep talking for hours.
Yeah. We should stop, but we should stop and come back to it. And like I said, just to bring it back to this, I'm doing this because there's a lot of pain in the world, and I've felt it. I felt it from men for years. I've,
Yeah.
sought out in the feminine. I've sought out in the
Yeah.
masculine.
Yeah.
And dude, it's brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what this is all about. And hopefully we honored it, and
Yes.
hopefully one thing I really want to say, we're talking about tough topics.
Yeah.
And we'll probably talk about more tough topics, like when it gets into consent and sexual assault, these like horrible things to talk about. But if we leave them just to people being reactive, we're not going to gain wisdom out of them. So that's really the point of this. So any closing thoughts on that?
That if any part of this conversation was triggering to you and you think, fuck no, or they're completely wrong or no, or whatever, it brings up something for you, that's okay. It's okay if this was triggering. It's okay if this brought up a lot for you. Like, take care of yourself, explore the thought. Like, if something about what we said, you think, fuck no, absolutely not. Like, explore it, explore what it is that's there. Like, give your existential kink, give the darkness, give the response, the charge, a moment to play out. So write down whatever you were just triggered in. So just to make sure that your nervous system is okay, because these are heavy topics. Write out what it is that just came up, or what it is that you want to say to us or shout at us, whatever. Give space to it. Let it play out. Kind of explore it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd even say, like, be careful how you give that space, because you give it anytime I am blaming somebody and I give it to somebody that will just accept my blame or accept my hate or accept just my opinion that demands judgment. I'm kind of co-signing my own BS. So
right.
Give it to a space where it can become its own thing. Whether you're yelling in nature or, to me, talking to somebody wiser than me.
Yes.
That's
Put it outside
answer.
of you.
Yeah. Cool.
I love that.
You're awesome.
You are
so
awesome.
Glad.
This was amazing.
So glad we're talking. We're gonna be talking more. It'll be good shit. So
yes,
cool stuff. All right.
Thank you, Steve. Have a wonderful day.
You too. And thank you so much for watching, listening, being a part of this. Feel free, please, to leave a comment and be interactive with us on this. This is a journey, and Sophie is actually the first person I'm interviewing on these topics that we're talking about. If you have different ideas, put them down below. If you want to join the discussion, put it down below. If you have recommendations, put it down below. If you want to be a part of it, put it down below. Shoot me an email. Let's talk. Let's build this conversation. And man, let's be great men. Let's be great women, because the world needs it.